Hey y'all, it's Subpar here. Um, so one thing that doesn't really get talked about a lot is maybe a ban list update. And I think that on initial release they were kind of like, hey, these cards will kind of put a restriction on and kind of let it be like the Wild Wild West otherwise. Um, and so far I, at least speaking from my personal experience, I've enjoyed it. It's cool seeing Maxi at 3. Just seeing all the crazy things people can actually come up with and do. Um, but there's some things that really shouldn't be on uh, the available side of cards. And we're gonna kind of dive in now. Um, so I'll be addressing cards that are currently on the list in some capacity, and some cards that need to be added to the list in some capacity. Um, and as always, this is personal preference. My own humble opinion for what I think would make the game better as a whole. Maybe not for some players, but a vast majority. And with that being said, let's just go ahead and jump into it. Um, Going on the ban list in in my idea of a perfect world is gonna be Gossip Shadow. I have no problem with the deck being able to hard make Rongo. What I do have a problem with is decks just turboing into this guy and making Rongo for free. Um, it's it's just not a fun environment. I mean, the card's a wall. I mean, you can't even kaiju it. But once again, that's a problem with Rongo, not necessarily Gossip Shadow, but the fact that there's only really one hand trap that stops this combo once you get to Gossip Shadow is kind of part of the problem. If you're not playing Imperm, generally you're not outing this combo once they hit Gossip Shadow, um, which is really unfortunate because not a lot of players currently have access to that. And while I don't think pay gating or anything like that is really the issue with cards being OP or broken, I do think this card, when there's really only one or two cards in the game that out it, Impermanence being one and Xyz's Encore being the other, no one's playing Xyz's Encore. Like, it's not reasonable. But yeah, I definitely think Gossip Shadow should just go ahead and get the ban. And in a similar context of not being able to play the game at all, VFD. The card's currently a 1. Uh, I don't think it should exist at all. There are ways to play around it. There are ways to play through it. But in the odd event you don't play Chalice, or you don't see the Chalice, or you don't see Imperm, um, you're really not having a good time. And you can kaiju it. I mean, that's really about it. And even then, you're fighting an uphill battle, right? Because you've already lost all your monsters effects for that turn. Overall, just toxic card. Probably shouldn't be made. I mean, you're going into Shinshin to make this, and then you get Shinshin back for free, essentially free. Yeah, you have to do the whole thing with 2 cards, but still. Um, we're also going to be looking at Vanity Zimninus being removed from the game. Um, this is just for those decks that don't really ever play more than one monster, really. Looking at you, Zoodiac. It's just the same reason it got banned in the first place in the TCG. It's just an incredibly toxic card. Yeah, there's really not much more to say about it. I mean, it's cool, getting to play with it at 1, but now I feel like we've had our fun. Let this just be gone. Um, the next card is gonna be slightly controversial. Um, so I've got Samorg on here as banned. It's gonna piss a lot of Leerless players off, and I'm sorry, but I don't like you. No, Samorg's just kind of crazy because it turbos out a card every end phase it survives. And honestly, if they've made it to Samorg, the opponents had no interruption, right? Um, and just being able to go straight into a barrier statue and protect a bunch of cards with a blanket effect, um, and also to not be targeted. I mean, it's kind of insane. You can't Valor it in main phase 2. You can't impermanent. It's by the time this card hits the board, there's nothing you can do. Um, and I think any card that just like generates something completely free is most of the time not very fair or fun. And it just so happens that the cards that this guy goes into are just not fun at all. It's either Wind Barrier Statue or Avian. And me personally, with the deck that I play, I would rather play against a Barrier Statue than the Avian because I can just evenly match the board. But not everybody plays that card. See people playing Droplets and Dark Ruler though, and those are outs to it. But I feel like the deck will be okay without this. Moving on to our next card to be banned. Yep. I mean, Union Care being in the game, the Destruction Sword Buster is just, it's doing exactly what it did before. People are just attaching it to Savage Dragon or whatever negate monster. It's just silly. I mean, locking out a mechanic for such a freely tutorable card is kind of crazy. In that same vein, I'm gonna get flack for not putting Scythe on this list. Scythe will have its time. Once DP comes, I'm completely for Scythe being gone. But for now, the amount of decks that can splash Scythe consistently with Dagda and pop it is very few and far between. It just doesn't quite carry the same weight right now as Destruction Sword Buster. But that actually concludes it for my banned cards. The only cards that seen adjustments on this list that were currently on the list are Vanity's Emptiness, Imperial Order, and VFD. Alright, moving on to the limited, I'm going to start with cards that are already on the list that are moving off of banned or moving from semi-limited. The first card, very controversial as well. Zoodiac Ratpier. The deck doesn't have the Barrage. It doesn't have Broad Bull. And you'll see later on in the list, I've also hit other cards. So it's not as crazy as it sounds to let Rat come to 1. Rat's never going to have its own inherent effect on the monster because it's a 1. And it's just another starter. It allows you to dump and make some different plays as opposed to stacking your cards on top of each other. I think it's completely fine at 1. Next, we're going to have, ironically enough, it kind of works with the Rat. We're going to see MX Saber Invoker come to 1 from banned. Yes, it's a generic search. Yes, it's rank 3 engine. But I feel like this card gets a really bad rep for a lot of BS reasons. In the TCG, it was originally banned because of the Fusion Sub +7 combo. And we haven't seen it come back since, right? That, along with Elder Entity Norden, which, spoilers, it's not coming back on this list either. I just feel like it can come to 1. It's using 2 mats to get ashed. Oh well. I love controversy, and I'm just now realizing this, and I'm sorry I'm such an awful person. I've got Dragoon coming to 1. pretty soon we're gonna have DP in the game. And I feel like if you live in a world where DP and Scythe can coexist, Dragoon is not that wild of a concept. Consistently discarding a card to negate a card, I think that's a better trade-off than what you get out of DPE. DPE is just pop, come back, and I don't know. I feel like even though Dragoon is a towers, I feel like players have played around it long enough to know how to get rid of it. But that being said, the card can stay banned. I mean, I would love to see it come to 1 though. It would definitely like bump Dark Magician up on the tier list, and I'm completely here for that. That's just my hot take. It can stay banned. It can come to 1. Ultimately, doesn't matter. I would like to see it at 1 though. Next up, we're going into new additions to the limited list. Let's just have at it. Card of Demise. I'm tired of deep draw decks. We just deep draw into our floodgates and go on about our day. We don't play hand traps anyway. Card's just kind of absurd. It'll force people to either cut it or play, hand traps in their Draco decks or whatever stun decks they're deciding to play. And normally I would say even in the TCG that this card could be at 3, but in best of 1 scenarios, I don't feel like deep draw decks are very fun because they're typically not putting up things you can really respond to, right? They're typically digging into their trap lineups, their floodgates, their Imperial Order, whatever. Speaking of Imperial Order, that is supposed to be on the ban list. That's my mistake. Yeah, IO definitely needs to be banned. I mean, it's a crazy card, especially with all control decks. But going back to Demise, it's just way too good of a card in the current game state. Being at 1 kind of makes you have the trade-off of, I might have to discard my hand traps if I activate it, yada yada yada. Being at 1 is okay. Next card is going to be Supreme King Dragon's Starving Venom. Similar to the TCG incident, and I believe OCG may have had an issue with it as well, although their card may have been a 1. They're just making 2 of these and duplicating Lurlusk Independent, or is it Independent Nightingale? Copying the effect, burning for 4,000 per copy. It's an FDK. If you FDK, you're an awful person. I'm just kidding, but not really. I actually played this deck in person at a regional once. Yeah, it's kind of fun, but like in a vacuum, we're in a best of 1. There's very few cards that deal with it. Putting the card at 1 still allows you to play it for its niche effect, but it doesn't allow you to be absolutely toxic. Let's just go ahead and talk about the elephant in the room, skill drain. We just got it to 3 at TCG. I think it should go to 1 in this. Same thing in a vacuum, best of 1, And when I say things like in a vacuum it's a best of 1, it's not necessarily justifying don't play back row removal. I'm an avid GOAT player. I believe in building a deck to be versatile, to be able to do different things, to be able to deal with different situations. And while you can play Lightning Storms, you can play Feather Duster, you can play Twin Twisters, you can play Cyclones, you can play all these cards, but your opponent who went first can play Judgment. Your opponent who went first can, once Imperial Order's banned, they can play anti-spells. By the time you really get to play the game, it's generally over. You've been mollywopped by 3 Golden Lords for a couple turns. Um, it is what it is. Skill drain's just way too oppressive. Um, and in the same vein, I'm not putting Monarch's Erupt on here at all, because there's a stipulation to Monarch's Erupt, and that's fair. If skill drain said pay 1,000 every standby phase, much like Imperial Order says pay 700, I would not nearly feel as bad about it. But skill drain is just, it's oppressive in a best of one format. But I don't think it should be banned. I feel like you should always be able to play around it or play into it. But that's how I feel about most cards. It's just one of those things. I don't feel like the game's in a very good place with Skill Drain at 3. Next up, this is going to be a power trick to Draco. Draco's definitely a tier 1 deck. Same thing with the Deep Draw engine and Skill Drain. I feel like when we hit the trap recursion, we're in a good spot. Dynamite, just being able to search Apocalypse, pop cards, being able to get return, bring back, the things that Dynamite does. I would like to see it knock down a peg or two. And I think the hits on this list will still make Draco competitive and viable, but it'll definitely make it less of a snooze fest, and less of a brick wall. They've always been a control deck, and I think with these hits on the list, they'll still be a control deck. I mean, they'll still be definitely like tier 1, tier 2. Let's see. So going on to the next card, seeing Engage go to 1. Skystriker is like consistently like tier 1.5, tier 1, and obviously the deck depends on the skill of the player. It's a very skill intensive deck. But 2 Engage is kind of nuts. You can definitely be like more wasteful with your resource management. And just being able to get any card you want multiple times a turn is not fun. Getting Pot of Greeted twice on a turn is not fun. And 3 times if they've got the Kogari. It's just... and you'll see it later on in the list where I kind of compensate for this. And if you're looking at it now, you already know. I don't know. Engage is just an amazing card, especially in the grind game. Like, I would say there's very few better cards than Engage in a grind game. When you're turn 8, turn 9, turn 10 into an actual, like, intense back and forth game, Engage just swings it so hard. It's kind of insane. The next card we're going to be looking at is Meow Mew. Prank Kids is up there. This will be the only hit for that deck. There's not many choke points for the deck as far as comboing off. This would just be hitting the recursion consistency and the amount of free banishing or free tributing you get for the rocket. The next card is going to be Ava to 1. Drytron go Burr. I'm not a fan of Drytron burring. They do way too much right now. It's kind of crazy. And in the same vein, bid 10 to 1. You're basically ending on 6 to 7 Omni negates. It's just not a fun environment to play the game. Obviously, you can turn the Herald into a Kaiju and make him a sea turtle for the day. But in the event you don't see that, like, the game is just absolutely miserable. Just a consistency check. The deck's definitely still playable. with 1 Ava, 1 Ben 10. In regards to consistency hits, we are looking at Weirdless Recital Starling. The card's just crazy. It's not a hard once per turn, and it's a plus. Like, it nets you 2 cards, and then you make your Draco Future. It's just kind of crazy. The card being in 1's completely fine. And by this point, you realize there's a lot of cards on this list, and I believe there are 42, and that's not counting the ones I may have forgotten to put on the list. Like I said, it's the wild, wild west out here. They just kind of let everything go crazy, and I think the first list is really going to reflect that whenever we do get it. And these are just cards I expect to see on that list in some capacity. Getting back into it, though, this is going to be a hit directly to Eldritch. Sanguine going to 1. The deck has so many ways to tutor into Golden Lord. It's just a straight-up consistency check. It definitely forces you to decide more carefully how you're going to use your back row. Because a lot of people activate Alkira, and then they'll chain Sanguine, and then you're not having a good time. But it's okay to not have a good time in Yu-Gi-Oh! That's part of the game. Not everybody wins, but when your opponent consistently does this multiple times and gains +2 card advantage off of 1 card, that's just not okay. Not a big fan of that. I think this doesn't make the deck unplayable at all. Maybe Skill Drain to 1 does, though. But I feel like this is just a direct consistency check for that deck. Next, we're looking at another consistency check. This will be for Brigade. This will be for Zoodiac. This is why I'm okay with the Rat coming to 1. You commit a normal summon for the Rat, just like you would any other Zoo. You are getting the dump, but I feel like Tenki can just go to 1. It's just one of those polarizing, generic searchers for its archetype, and unfortunately, it searches like 3 different archetypes, 3 different types of monsters. This will be a consistency hit to all of those Bird and Brigade and Zoodiac decks. Next card up is a Skystriker hit and a Draco hit, mainly. Kaiser Coliseum. This card's nuts. If I was a betting man, they'll actually probably just ban this card. There's been so many game states that I've seen that have just been decided by Kaiser Coliseum. It's a polarizing card, right? It just makes you go, okay, I'm going to run into you head first, and then they have something to deal with you. It just slows down the game state, like, very, very, it's just crazy to think about this card being at 3, or let alone at 1, because we've had it banned in the TCG for so long. But yeah, put it at 1. Let people have fun. It can be a Saki one of, just like Skill Drain. But at 3, just like Skill Drain, it's kind of crazy. And the last final card for the limited list, Miscellaneousaurs. Dinos are easily tier 1. And not trying to offend anyone, but if you think otherwise, you're playing a completely different game. This deck is insane. 3 miscellaneous? What? The card's just bonkers. Like, you can't have 3 of this card. Like, in no world is that actually okay. Yes, it's been really cool to see happen, and it's been nice to experience it, just like 3 Kaiser Coliseum. Just like Vanity's Emptiness. Just like VFD. Just like Rongo with the Gossip Shadow. But it needs to be put in check. Dino is just crazy. The amount of consistency they get is just absolutely insane. This card definitely needs to go to 1. People need to be punished for playing it poorly, not being rewarded for having multiple copies. And I think being at 1, you either choose to blanket protect for that turn and get your extender, or you hold it. You hold it until it has to be used as an interaction. And unfortunately, we're in a state where you can just do whatever you want and get another one. And that's just not here for it. Hit it, put the deck in check. You also have 3 lethargism. So, the deck's kind of nuts. You can make VFD in the current game. Obviously, it's banned on this list, but just throwing that out there. So that's the last card on the limited list. We're going to move on to the semi-limited list, and starting with cards that are currently on the list in some capacity. I'm just going to kind of lump these cards together. So we've got Chronograph Sorcerer, Double Iris, and Harmonizing Magician. What is Double Iris doing at 1? It's not 2018 anymore. Harmonizing, I know OCG's scared of this card. TCG loves this card. It's just whatever. I mean, you're generally searching this card one way or the other, unless they're playing Drone Lotware and they hit you on the first search. You're pretty much always getting this card anyway, so it's not like they're doing anything by having it too. Chronograph's going to be kind of like a stress test. I feel like with Electromite, it can get kind of nutty, but in the same scope of things, we have Astrograph at 1, which I think is much more insane than having 3 of these, honestly. Just being able to loop the Astrograph with Electromite and get a search and draw, like, that's crazy. This guy does kind of enable you to link climb, but what deck doesn't really do that? That's a combo deck anyway. So then we're moving on to Cyframe Gear Gamma. Sorry, these cards are not semi-limited. What have I done? Oh no. Hold up. We skipped the semi-limited. No one told me. Alright, yeah. So Chronograph's going to 2. It's not going to 3. For the same reasons as I said. But we'll also see Harp Horror go to 2. This is just a consistency bump for Orcus players. I mean, the deck's kind of neutered in this anyway. I'm okay with this card coming to 2. It'd be a good stress test, just like Chronograph. Following suit with the changes to Skystriker will be Kagari coming to 2. Once again, stress test, see if it can come to 3. Card can definitely come to 3 long term. It'll help with recurring the engage, but you're not going to get to freely set your engage off multi-roll and then not be punished for it. Yeah, you definitely have to treat it like a baby and take care of it. Let's see. We're also looking at Reincarnation coming into 2. The deck doesn't really do anything. You can't firewall Lilybell Loop anymore. A lot of the silly interactions are gone. Yeah, you can still get draw reincarnated, but you can have that done with one reincarnation in the game. This card coming in 2 is fine. It's consistency. Lets you special from grave a little bit more. The last card that's currently on the list in some capacity coming to 2 is Zeus. I I can see why Zeus is at 1. I can see why Zeus should be at 3. I can see why Zeus should be semi-limited. Um, and same thing with most cards in this. It's a stress test. Is choose Zeus going to break the game? Probably not. It definitely like allows those linear XZ based strategies to get a bump in power, but that's about it. Card can definitely be it too, though. And for the new cards coming onto semi-limited, floodgates, baby. Okay, goes in rivalry. There can be only one. All these cards to 2. Just with the way how sacky it can be. Yes, people should build their decks to deal with these cards, but there are so many of these cards that do not affect linear strategies, and that is the biggest problem. Is the decks that play them don't get hurt by them, and there's no drawback between the two being played together. This effectively cuts out 3 floodgates, plus 2 from the skill drain, plus 2 from Kaiser. I just don't feel like a format that becomes monkey flip is going to be the most appealing to players. And the idea is to keep people playing the game. And after your opponent flips rivalry goes in for about the 50th time, you really don't want to play this game nearly as much anymore. And I say 50th, that's really about the 3rd, because I know I'm losing my shit. It's just one of those things. If you're playing the out, it's always good. But currently, you're in a state where you play the Harpies Feather Duster, they chain the Imperial Order. You know, you both have the one of, and unfortunately, their one of protects everything they have. But anywho, yeah, I just feel like it would be more healthy for the game to just see them knocked down a little bit. Obviously, like, I've climbed to Plat 1 in the first month with these cards all being at 3. It's not like, it's not as if they're deterring me from climbing personally, but I know that my deck building reflects the problem cards that are on this list. But anyway, the last card going to semi-limited is going to be Tri-Brigade Revolt. I feel like Revolt just rewards being a bad player. I feel like it allows you to be interrupted so many times, and your combo be stopped so many times to just be rewarded. The card's nuts. I mean, you can special your banished monsters, your graveyard monsters, and then link summon, and then trigger all their effects when they hit the grave again. Like, that is insane. By any standard, that is insane. And the fact that you can do it freely 3 times is just crazy. And, of course, it's going to be a power check to the Tri-Brigade decks. Just like the tanky hit. I don't know. This card is just insane. I think this is like, if you showed somebody this card and explained to them link summoning in 2006, they would be like, why would you ever make that? That's broken. Because it is. I mean, it's good going first, good going second. It's just a amazing busted card. But that wraps it up for the semi-limited. So for going to 3 is obviously everything left on the list. So Cyframe Gamma to 3, Gamma at 2 is a meme. The card can definitely exist. Once it goes off, if it goes off on your turn, it's now 2 bricks for your opponent. Gamma can be a 3. It's just simple as that. Jackalope to 3. I see no issue with this. People are generally playing just one of them anyway. Etelly 3, once again, VW is going to be taking a big hit with VFD getting banned. Etelly's not that crazy at 3. It's already at 2. I mean, all the cards are specialing themselves anyway. It's not like it's replacing anything. But it's, I mean, at 3, it's definitely a consistency increase. Alright, so looking at Red Reboot. This one was an odd one to even think about being at 3 because of how oppressive it is. This card could be at 2. And now that I'm looking at it, it should get a stress test. Reboot should definitely get the stress test. A lot of people do like the trap strategies. But Reboot being in a deck going against a monster combo deck is a dead card. I mean, it's literally going to do nothing. So you run that risk in this format where it's best of 1. You could be playing, harpies, and these people just don't even play spell or trap cards, like a Pac-Man-esque deck. It's risk versus reward when it gets to that point. Scapegoat, go to 3. Who cares? Yeah. I don't even know why this card would be at 1 on our old list. I think it just came to 2 on the TCG list. Maybe I'm wrong on that one. I'll have to look. So, in losing the miscellaneous source, I felt like it was only right to bump Overraptor up to 3. It's more of a starter card. Whereas Misk is just kind of free, like, give me more, give me your money. But yeah, 2 Mists for 1 Overraptors feel like a fair trade-off. Stream King Dragon Darkworm. Cards just, like, whatever. Only good in a handful of decks. I don't feel like it's, like, doing anything at 1. And I don't feel like it's worthy of the stress test. Double Iris and Harmonizing for the awkward explanation I had to give earlier. If you want the cards, you're gonna get the cards. It's not like you can't get the 1 of Double Iris or the 2 of Harmonizing. You can. The deck just does it. So these cards at 3 is literally just like having the cards at 1 or 2. This one's kind of controversial, I guess. Trickstar Light Stage. We play in a format where you're not necessarily going to use it just for the Trickstar search. Like, you could use it and go into Corbane, whatever. Corbane search, like, what is it? Candina. Like, you could do that. But the most practical application in a best of 1 format where trap decks and control decks are, like, super crazy is the back row lockdown. You're putting your opponent in a position where they have to react. And I feel like that is a much healthier form of Yu-Gi-Oh! Yes, I know some crazy things can happen because of this card, but ultimately, we've been playing with VFD. Vanity's Emptiness. Like, this card is okay. This card is okay. And last but not least, totally awesome. Cards at 1 currently, just bring it to 3. And I say this with a little bit of bias, but I love Paleofrog. And I get that prank kids can do some crazy things with Toad. But at the end of the day, it's Toad. It's a 1-for-1 generally that does recur itself, but it's not game breaking at 3. It lets more rogue strategies exist. Lets people play Paleofrogs like me. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. I know this is a big list. I try to condense it down as much as possible, but the game was released in such a chaotic yet interesting state. Um, I I'm really excited to see where the game goes. Honestly, um, got a lot of people crying for best of three format. I'm completely okay with the best of one format. Yeah, you're gonna have to learn to deck build. I'm sorry. Um, a best of one format in a game full of RNG, you know, there are going to be sacky instances, and I wouldn't mind them implementing like a mulligan for player going second. But what kind of odds are we talking about shifting there? That's a whole different discussion for a whole different video. But yeah, if you guys think my list is stupid, uh, you're probably not the only one. Um, if you agree with some of the points on my list, let me know. If you disagree, let me know. I try to generally be as fair as possible when looking at things. I try to look at them objectively. Um, and I feel like this list of changes is being the most fair and objective player that I can be. But if you liked it, drop a like, drop a sub, and we'll see you next time.